This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Fulis.
And today we are talking about Judgment Day 2008. It went down on May 18th, 2008. So tomorrow would be the anniversary of that show.
12 years.
12 years ago.
It's amazing to look back at some of the names that we're going to talk about in 12 years' time that have come and gone or that are still there. Like it's actually amazing at the amount of people that are still relevant then and now. So.
Yeah, when I look at the match card for this show, it struck me by just how much talent was on this show. I mean, there's a lot of Hall of Famers and a lot of future Hall of Famers going to be that were represented here.
Well, in full disclosure, we do, our episodes, we go back and we look and try to find, shows that are around whatever day we're recording or whatnot. We've seen some stinkers.
Yes.
Like we've seen some show cards where like, ooh, we're not doing that one. Because there's like maybe one or two matches. This one, though, just by the names before we went back and watched it, had a lot of potential. So, and I think, not to give anything away, but I think it lived up to it. I think it was a pretty good show all in all. I won't give my grade yet, but I think it was a pretty good show.
No, I agree. I think one of the more underrated shows, I think. You don't really think of Judgment Day as maybe a top-tier pay-per-view, but this one, like I said, had a lot of good matches and a lot of good talent on it.
I totally agree.
So let's get started. There were 8 total matches, 1 dark match, and that was Cody Rhodes and Hardcore Holly getting a win over kind of a weird tag team here, Carlito and Santino Marella. This was for the World Tag Team Championship.
Not to be confused with the WWE Tag Team Championships.
No.
This is back when they had the 2 split championships, but they weren't named after any shows, so it was kind of confusing.
Yeah, you had the World titles, and then you had the WWE titles. And
I like the idea of the concept based on the fact you have a World title and a WWE title for singles. So, like, it made sense, but, like, it's confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but yeah, talk about a weird tag team though. Carlito and Santino Marella, kind of 2 just characters you wouldn't think would necessarily team up together. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what the backstory was of that, but it kind of sounds thrown together to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you and I both know how we feel about Cody Rhodes, so I think out of that group, he's the one guy that you can, especially now, attribute to having a good match. Back then, he was still pretty green. Bob Holly was kind of bringing him with him. Bob Holly might be a little underrated too. I mean, he has the reputation for being a bit of a prick backstage,
yes,
or a hard ass, I guess. Really, would be the best way to describe it. But it was what it was. Clearly, I mean, we don't have any way to look at it. They don't have a time on it, or it wasn't. There was no pre-show back then, so we don't even know what it looked like.
So we actually kick off the card with a pretty star-studded match here. You have John Cena and JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield. They're going to get about 15 minutes here. John Cena would get the win with the FU. It wasn't the AA back then. It was still the FU. Kind of what surprised me is JBL kind of dominated the majority of this match, but John Cena hits the FU out of nowhere, and there's your winner.
Well, and JBL went for that second clothesline. He got greedy. He pulled John Cena in, hit him with a wicked clothesline, and then tried to do it again. And Cena countered it into the FU, AA, whatever you want to call it, and got the win. Kind of stole the win, like you said. JBL, and even later on in the night, they were talking to Mickie James backstage before her match, and she had just gone out on a date with John Cena the week before. So they wanted to know like how that went, and JBL interrupted that segment and said, you want to talk about beating John Cena? Like I beat him for 20 minutes,
yeah,
just because he won the match, So they definitely played on JBL beating the tar out of him for 15 minutes, and then John Cena kind of stealing one.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was kind of the narrative of that match, but both of these guys, not. Obviously, JBL is retired now and does the commentary every once in a while. John Cena's kind of becoming a part-timer. We last saw him at WrestleMania. So
he might be done, too. We don't know, with the Firefly Funhouse match. That might be it for him. We don't know. I mean, he might make some one-off things here and there, but it kind of led towards the end of John Cena.
It could be, yeah. He's kind of doing the Rock thing, kind of transitioning into movies and acting and stuff like that. So, yeah, we don't know what the future holds for John Cena.
Yeah, no, we have no idea at this point.
So next up, we have tag team match for the WWE tag team titles. You have John Morrison and The Miz getting a win over.
Hey, ho ho.
Yes. Hey, the more things change, the more they say the same.
Yeah, 12 years ago, like I said, it was funny because I even said that when they came out. Because Amber was watching the show with me last night for parts of it, and I was like, hey, ho ho, when they came out, just because it was, like you rewind the clock 12 years ago, and there they were.
So they're going to win over Kane and CM Punk, kind of another interesting tag team, in just over 7 minutes here. I thought this match...
Yeah, it was just there. Not to cut you off. It wasn't a bad match, but it was, like you said, it's a weird team to begin with, of Kane and CM Punk. And this was, back when Punk still hadn't caught fire really yet. He had a cult following. He's always had one, but he hadn't really caught lightning in a bottle like he did in a meeting of this. So even the fans were just like, yeah, they didn't. It was just kind of there.
Yeah, it was just kind of there. I mean, they had a little bit of a backstory. This was back when they had the ECW show on. Kane and CM Punk lost singles to Morrison and Miz, respectively.
Going into that show, Kane was the ECW champion.
Yes, he was.
So
there was a little bit of a backstory, but yeah, the match was kind of there. Kind of fell a little bit flat for me. Next up, though, a lot of talent in this match. You have Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. They're going to get about 16 minutes here. Shawn Michaels going to get the win. Talk about a star-studded match. It doesn't get much better than Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho.
No, I totally agree. Two of my all-time favorites. Shawn Michaels, probably my most all-time favorite. If I had to pick one. And there's a lot of people that feel that way. One of the best in the business. And Chris Jericho, I think even at that time had already reinvented himself a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
He had the Save Us gimmick, on his pants at that point, and he's still. It's amazing to think what he is now with AEW, with a little bit of the bubbly and all that stuff. That he's done to keep himself relevant and wrestling well past what would be considered his prime, but still wrestling at a really high level and being entertaining. This match very easily was my favorite up until this point. And I'm not saying the other matches after this were, not good or bad or whichever way, but this was definitely the highlight of the night so far. This was a great match.
No, I agree. I mean, if anything, I wish it would have been a little bit longer. I mean, I'm not a fan of really long matches, but when you have the talent level of Michaels and Jericho here, I think you could give them a little bit longer than 60 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might have been worried about time later on in the day, in the show too. So they, I personally, I would have started the show with this match. Looking back on it, this would have been a great way to start the show. You could give them as much time as you wanted then. Let them tear the house down and then shorten everything after that if you had to. If that's what you were worried about. But
yeah,
not that the JBL match wasn't good, because that was actually for the two guys in the ring that really aren't. They're more. They even said that too on commentary, that JBL and John Cena are kind of more like brawlers.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, this match was a fantastic match. It was backstory. Batista was facing Shawn Michaels in a match, and Jericho was the special referee. Shawn Michaels feigned a knee injury to get the win over Batista by hitting Sweet Chin Music. Then the next week on Raw, Jericho tried to prove that Shawn was faking, and he knew it. He teamed with him. Shawn limped to the ring. They ended up winning the match. And then after that, Jericho was convinced that Shawn was really hurt. And then Shawn said, "Not hurt." Jericho's, "No, I know you are. You're hurt. We're not going to have this match because you're hurt. I don't want to." And Shawn's like, "I'm not hurt." And he kicks his head off. He goes, "Trust me, I'm not hurt." And then Batista even said that if he found out that Shawn was faking an injury, that he was going to hurt him. And that actually comes true after the match between Jericho and Shawn Michaels in the locker room. Batista said, "I'm not going to hurt you right now because you know it's coming." He goes, "I'm doing it on my dime. When I'm ready, you're going to get hurt. I promise you." So there was good storytelling there too. Not just a great match, but good storytelling to go along with a great match.
No, absolutely. Next up, we have a triple threat match for the WWE Women's Championship. You have Mickie James getting a win over Beth Phoenix and Melina in just over 6 minutes. This was actually a pretty good women's match in my opinion. A lot of times in this era, women's matches were kind of let me up matches. That we've talked about that before in the show. But I actually thought this one, was pretty good. I mean, women's wrestling, there wasn't as much of an emphasis on it as it is today. So considering the era that this match took place in, I was actually pretty happy with it.
Yeah, no, it was very quick for what I thought it was going to be. I figured they could have went a little bit longer with that match too. Not that it necessarily mattered one way or the other. In the the turnout of the match of what was going to happen, it didn't really make that much of a difference. But I was kind of surprised it wasn't a little bit longer, where there was 3 people involved, three wrestlers that could really go. At that time. So it was surprising, but like you said, at that time, women weren't really taken seriously to begin with. They were starting to, but it was not a terrible match by any means. It was just like you said, it was they probably viewed it as something that wasn't going to be much, and it actually turned out to be something pretty good for what it was.
No, absolutely, totally agree with you there. Next up, we have a singles match for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. You have The Undertaker getting a win by countout over Edge in about a little over 16 minutes. So the assumption was, when that happened, that The Undertaker became the champion. But General Manager Vicky Guerrero comes out and says, a title can't be won by countout or disqualification, so The Undertaker is not the champion. And The Undertaker gets pissed off and tombstones Edge after the fact.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because they even mentioned that on commentary, that they thought, the championship couldn't change hands, but this was vacant, so it wouldn't be changing hands. And really all this did was lead to a rematch at One Night Stand. It was a TLC match between The Undertaker and Edge, and in the storyline, if Edge beat The Undertaker loses, he would be fired, kayfabe fired from the WWE. And of course, this is when they had La Familia, so you had Chavo and Bam Neely interfere in that match, which would then get Edge the title. So it was more story building to a bigger story, a bigger blow off, and it was a good match though. I mean, I don't know if you have a better, especially for longevity in the business, than The Undertaker. And Edge is, he's just now at that time in 2008 starting to come into his own as a great performer. So it was a good match for what it was. And especially where you have a schmozz finish like that, you kind of feel like, even the crowd there, you could tell they were like, oh, come on. Like, really? But it built the story. So.
And The Undertaker recently in the news here just signed a 15-year deal with the WWE.
I wonder what Bret Hart thinks about that.
I know, right?
For those of you who don't know, that's what Bret Hart had signed before the whole screw job happened. That Vince said he wasn't going to honor contract and let him out of it. Couldn't afford to pay him, quote unquote, and he went to WCW. But yeah, the fun thing about this whole thing is that The Undertaker, being who he is, and what he's done in the business. Have you seen any of the Last Ride that they're airing on the network, Tim?
I have not. I've been meaning to watch it, but I have not gotten around to watching it yet.
Yeah, the first episode was out last week. The second episode is supposed to drop today. And so far, it's been really good. It's definitely a look we've never seen before. So it's nice to see. And this was when The Undertaker still, not The Undertaker can't wrestle now, but I mean, he was still at another level, even for an older guy in 2008. Mm-hmm. So I definitely encourage anybody that hasn't seen the Last Ride. I think it's the 5-part thing.
Yeah, it's a 5-part.
I assume they're probably going to be about an hour long each, because that first one was about an hour. So I encourage anybody that hasn't seen it to watch it, to follow along. I feel like it's going to be a groundbreaking type of documentary, especially on someone who's always been really mysterious and kind of, kayfabe the business. He's always been, in character and stuff like that. So I think this is going to be something fun for the wrestling fans to see.
No, I agree. I mean, it's definitely going to give you a look at Mark Calloway as well.
Yeah. Yep. So, the man behind The Undertaker.
Behind The Undertaker, yeah. Next up, we have MVP Montel Latavius Porter coming out, issuing an open challenge. That is answered by Jeff Hardy, and Jeff Hardy is going to get the win about a little under 10 minutes here. One thing that I took note, the finish came with the Whisper in the Wind, did not come with the Swanton Bomb. So I thought that was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he missed the Swanton. MVP rolled out of the way, only for him to hit the Whisper in the Wind. And I say hit it. I mean, he barely even hit him. It wasn't the cleanest Whisper in the Wind that I've ever seen. And yeah, it got the 1-2-3, which, like you said, it seemed out of place.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they were told that. I don't know if they had more planned and they told them to go home, early, and that's what they decided to do, or what. But and this match was just kind of there too. It was almost like they had 10 minutes to kill, so they were like, let's just send out Jeff Hardy and MVP.
Yeah, I think it was just there. I mean, they probably didn't want to do 2 world title matches back to back. They wanted something in between. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this was kind of just a match that was just kind of there. Just kind of give the fans a little bit of a break in between the 2 title matches.
Right. I agree with that.
Well, speaking of the other title match, next up is a steel cage match for the WWE Championship. You have Triple H getting a win over Randy Orton in about 21 minutes here. They did your typical steel cage match, antics, the faults, escape attempts, and everything like that. The finish comes, Randy Orton goes for a punt, misses it. Triple H with a big chair shot to the head of Orton and hits the pedigree for the 1-2-3.
Yeah, and I mean, this match was also, it's tough. This is the era where they're just now coming out of, bleeding, and bleeding and stuff. So it's hard when you have, and I think JR talked about this on one of his podcasts, or even his book, or I remember him talking about it, and it might have been his podcast with Conrad, saying that how do you have a steel cage match where somebody's been, bounced off the cage 26 times and they're not bleeding?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the cages are starting to lose its luster, just because, and I get that you don't have to bleed all the time and all, but still, if you're gonna have a cage match, the blow-off these guys should be bloody. It should be a physical, especially, you're bouncing the head, the first beginning of the match, Orton tries to dive out of the cage before the door was shut, and Orton slams the door off Triple H's head. You mean to tell me if that happened in real life, you wouldn't have been, bleeding?
Yeah.
So, like, that took away from it a little bit, and being, I guess, too much of a smart mark, I guess, for the business in my thing. It was still a great match. I was surprised no one bladed, but then I remembered, they're kind of getting out of that. That had been a couple of years prior where they, I mean, when was the infamous JBL match? Was that 2004?
With Eddie Guerrero, that was 2004, yeah. Ironically, at Judgment Day.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was, 4 years removed. I'm not saying it had to be like that, where Eddie was, bleeding like a stuck pig, but it took away from the match a little bit, just because it's hard. If you're watching it and you see, like I said, someone grinding their face into the cage, or they get catapulted into it like Orton did to Triple H in the match, I suspected when that happened he's going to get bloody, but he never did. So Orton had a little bit of blood in his mouth, but I mean, it is what it is. But it was still a really good match. It's hard to say that Triple H couldn't have, they're not going to have a bad match between the two. So, it wasn't as good as it could have been visually, just because I don't know if they were apprehensive. Like I said, they've been trying to go more PG, but it was pay-per-view, so you still could have, you could have got away with it on pay-per-view, but it was surprising that neither one of them ended up bleeding.
Yeah, no, I agree. That kind of took away from the match, like you said. The fact that, it's not as realistic as if they were bleeding.
Right.
So, no, I agree with your take there. Overall, I thought this show was pretty good. Like I said, a lot of talent on this show. I'll probably give it about a 7.5 rating. I thought it was really good. If I had to recommend one match out of the show, I would go with the Michaels Jericho match.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think there's a better match on the card, especially from a wrestling perspective and storytelling too, for what it was. I mean, think about it. These guys, how many years removed are they from facing each other at WrestleMania? When Jericho, kicks him in the nuts afterwards. you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've always had great matches. So there's always a story there. Jericho was thought to be the second coming of Shawn Michaels per se. So there's always a story there between those two guys, and they both are very good storytellers in the ring. They're both great wrestlers. So yeah, hands down, without a doubt, the best match on the card. Like I said, I enjoyed the Edge and Undertaker match, knowing that what they were building towards, and then even the Orton and Triple H match wasn't a bad match. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it definitely Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho.
So there you have it. That is our wrap up of Judgment Day 2008. You know, go out of your way, give this show a watch. It's definitely one that we recommend. Definitely probably a sleeper show. You might not think about that's worth watching, but like I said, a lot of talent.
I even forgot too, not to cut you off. I forgot how good the first match was too, with John Cena and JBL. That was a great match too.
Yeah.
For what it was, dawned on me. Thinking of who was in the show. Even that match was a really good match. So and you see the names and you think, yeah, I don't know. Like JBL has kind of been a stiff worker over the years, so you're not going to get high flying or anything like that. And then John Cena has been great, deemed the guy that has 5 moves, the 5 moves of doom. So even for that, it was a great match too. So yeah, I think 7 is definitely where I'd put it. Even pushing 7.5, like you said, definitely an underrated show, no doubt about it.
So now we still have a little bit of time here left on the show, so we figured we'll kind of go through a little bit of some news and notes, that have happened more recently. Becky Lynch.
We decided that when we have time left over on a show like this, we may as well do a little bit of because this is, that was past, this is present. So we'll touch on a few things, kind of change it up a little bit, not have an actual topic, but give you some news and notes from the last couple weeks or so.
Sure. So let's start off, Becky Lynch with a huge announcement on Monday Night Raw this past week that she and her fiance Seth Rollins are expecting a child that's due in December. So we want to wish our congratulations to both Becky and Seth.
Yeah, there'll be a little baby Messiah man.
Yes.
It was expected to either be that or that she was injured. Those are the only two things it could have been, going into that show saying she had a big announcement. I do feel that, I don't know if you saw the tweet from CM Punk, I do feel like they missed an opportunity to have Asuka still be a heel at the end of that. She could have, taken the title and greenlisted Becky after the announcement to keep the heat on Asuka.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you also have a storyline. If Becky does come back after she has the baby, you then have, well, hey, remember what you did to me 9 months ago, or whatever. So when CM Punk first tweeted that, I was like, oh man, you're right, so right, because it wouldn't have been any physicality, and it wouldn't have hurt anything. But yeah, no, congratulations to Becky. I like how she ended the thing. You go be a warrior because I'm going to be a mother. It was definitely the line of the night, and it was interesting how Shayna Baszler played that up throughout the night. She has that cold-hearted bitch thing down packed. I don't care. Screw you. The stuff she said about the baby, about who the father was, and the stuff she said to Natalia about she's never going to know what it's like to have a baby and all. It was she played it to a T. When my wife was watching it, she was like, "Oh my god!" Like, yeah. It was not very tasteful, but that's what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if anybody watched SmackDown Friday, you saw the beginning of the Intercontinental Championship tournament. Sami Zayn is unable to compete, which I think is funny because the story behind that is that he doesn't want to come back because he doesn't feel it's safe to come back due to the COVID-19 stuff. He's not injured from what we've heard. From what I've heard, he's refusing to perform, which he was told he could do, which is what Roman Reigns is doing right now. I mean, Roman Reigns is a different story because he had leukemia, and I get it. But supposedly this wasn't to be held against the wrestlers that chose not to perform because they wanted to stay safe. But yet they're stripping Sami of the title, and that leads to the tournament, which the first round had Drew Gulak against Daniel Bryan, and apparently that's Drew Gulak's last match in the WWE.
Yeah, his contract expired and was not renewed, so it's a little odd timing-wise, but yeah, Drew Gulak is no longer with the WWE.
Yeah, do you have anything else from the week that you wanted to touch
on? No, I think that's it for me. I think those were the kind of the more newsworthy notes of the week.
We still got a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, we do.
All right. I posted about 3 weeks ago on our Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present Facebook page. Give that a follow or a like or comment on it if you feel free. It'll give you some content that we share that we think is interesting. Plus, it gives you a direct link to the shows. So don't be afraid to interact with us. We like it. We're trying to be a little bit more interactive on there. But I posted this about 3 weeks ago, and it's literally a pick your poison. You can only choose one out of these 6 choices. And I'm going to read them off. I'm going to ask Tim his opinion afterwards, and I want you guys to think about it. I know what my answer is. Anyways, so you can only choose one. Cesaro wins the WWF or WWE Championship. WWF, what year is it? Anyways, WWE Championship. The Undertaker wrestles Sting at WrestleMania is number 2. Jon Moxley returns to WWE. Number 4, The Fiend loss to Goldberg gets nullified. Number 5, John Cena becomes a 17-time world champion. And then number 6 is The New Day never breaks up. You can only pick one of those. I've narrowed it down to 2. And I'll tell you my 2 in a minute. But do you have a 1, Tim?
I do. I just because the inner child in me wants to see this match. I know it probably would not live up to the hype because both guys are, older in years, but I would still go with Undertaker and Sting at WrestleMania. That's just something I want to see. I mean, I don't care that the match will probably be bad. I mean, but it can't be worse than Undertaker Goldberg. So,
no, it can't get no way.
So,
yeah, I'm 100% with you. That is my 1A, and I only say 1A because to me for me to pick that, it would have to be when they were both in their prime.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing you said is it might be an ugly match now, and I still want to see it, but because this other thing is on the list, that really, and you know where I'm going because this has irked me since it happened. I'm gonna pick The Fiend losing to Goldberg. I think that was garbage. Mm-hmm. I think the whole storyline of him losing, Goldberg going to WrestleMania as a champion, just to give the title to Roman Reigns, which didn't happen, to make The Fiend look bad, still have him lose to a 97-year-old Goldberg. It makes no sense. I think that they don't want The Fiend to lose to Roman, but they let Goldberg beat him. They build him up and then knock him down with somebody who's literally in his 50s. I know he's not 97. He's still in great shape, but whatever. But yeah, so if the Undertaker and Sting match could happen in their prime, I'm jumping on that one right off the bat. But if it was like right now, it has to be for me the Fiend Goldberg thing because it makes me sick just talking about it.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about that before. It made absolutely no sense. So that would be my second choice if I had if I got a second choice, or that would be it because that was it's indefensible to be honest.
Yeah. No, and like I said, the reason they did it was to make The Fiend look strong because they didn't want Roman to beat The Fiend, but yet they made him look weak and had him lose to Goldberg. So whatever. It makes no sense, and you never know what Vince and those guys are thinking. But be curious once Bruce Pritchard gets fired again from the WWE. But he has to think of some of his better podcasts when he didn't work there. I think everybody knows that because he can't really talk as candidly now about the stuff that's going on now that he could before. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting to see what he has to say about the whole Fiend Goldberg situation, down the road. And even Conrad said that. He said a couple podcasts ago, man, we're going to have some good shows once you get fired again.
Yeah.
So, it would be cool if Cesaro won the title, but I don't think they'd ever really put it on him to have him, be pushed as a champion. I don't think they believe in him at all. And Cena, he does not need to be a 17-time champion. He didn't even need to be a 16-time champion. He just stayed at 15 and it would have been fine.
No, I agree.
And I don't see the New Day breaking up anytime soon unless there's a really good storyline. And when it does, it should be really good if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're going to last forever, so I think there would be some sort of interesting storyline for them to break up. But I could take that or leave that. It's not something I desperately need to see or not need to see.
Well, and then Jon Moxley returning to the WWE wouldn't be Jon Moxley returning; it'd be Dean Ambrose. And, they had him in a shell of what he was. So there's no point even you can write that one off.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys. There was some comments on it at the time, but like I said, we're gonna try to, if we have time, go a little extra with current events and stuff every week, depending on what our show format is, and we figured that would be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Give us a comment on our Facebook page. We might read the responses in a future episode. So definitely follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, and don't forget to follow us and subscribe to us on Podbean as well.
Yep. I mean, we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, just it shouldn't be too hard to find us. But all these platforms are for us to get you to listen to what we're talking about now. So if you dig what we're doing, listen to it. Podbean, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, and keep it going.
Absolutely. Coming up for you guys next week, we're going to talk about Over the Limit 2010. Hard to believe, 10 years since that show. So that will be an interesting, look at that show that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to have any new news like we had this week. We might, but, obviously if there's anything worth talking about, we'll bring it up and we'll chat with you. And then, Over the Limit, 2010, 10-year anniversary of that show.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for that. Until then, I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Pulis.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present.